Hi, this is John Pena, and you're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. You know, a lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for adults who want to learn to play bass, because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to groove, to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. ForBassPlayersOnly.com, let's play bass. My guest this week is an old friend, John Pena. If you don't know about John, where have you been? John spent his early years in New York and in Puerto Rico, learned some music basics from his father, and just took off from there. Over the course of an amazing career, John has played bass with so many people: Carlos Santana, Natalie Cole, Chaka Khan, Chick Corea, Steve Vai, Diana Ross, Aretha Franklin, Michael McDonald, Dionne Warwick, Michael Brecker, David Sanborn. I mean, the list just goes on and on. His TV and music credits include Rush Hour, Man in Black 2, Friends, Oprah, Desperate Housewives. As a composer, arranger, and performer, John has received multiple nominations and awards, including the Latin Grammys and Cable Ace Awards. He's got a brand new release called Life, Legacy, and Music Part 1. Hello, John. Welcome back to ForBassPlayersOnly.com.
Good to be back, my brother. It's good to be back.
Thank you. The last time you were on my show, we were at the 2016 NAMM show in Anaheim, California.
Has it been that long?
It's been that. I didn't realize it had been that long either. And your first interview on For Bass Players Only was published, are you ready for this? July 26, 2010.
Wow.
So welcome back. Why don't we just get right into it? Tell me about Life, Legacy, and Music Part 1. I can tell you that I've listened to it. I love it. So give me the story. What's the background and whatever else you want us to know about it?
Well, it first started with a lot of, I did my first CD, I did it back in 2008. And, it was just something that I wanted to put out there as part of my expression. So I put it out there. And then after that, I had constantly every year people going, when is your next project coming out? So, I didn't really pay attention to it at the beginning. But then afterwards, after quite a few years, I was like, got all this music here. And then I have all these tracks that I've recorded. There's tracks that we've recorded as recent as the last few months, and tracks that we recorded maybe 20 or 30 years ago. And lucky to have the masters to be able to remix and rearrange things with them. So I kind of wanted to put something together that kind of mirrored my life's work, and things that would be I'm trying to find the right words, everything to do with my life, with my love for music, the different styles of music, my spiritual walk, my love for working with other musicians, because there are a lot of musicians from different parts of the world, not just in the US. So then it became a huge overtaking, because then suddenly it's turned into a double album. And then now I decided to break it up in 3 parts, and to kind of give me some space, because we're still finishing mixing the second part 2, and then still working on tracks in part 3. So it's become quite of an ordeal, but I'm loving the process.
It's an ambitious project you bit off there. But I got to tell you, just getting one album out is really commendable. I've interviewed over 800 bass players, and almost every one of them has told me, I've been a side man or a side woman for so many people for so many years. I've got enough of my own material. I want to put out an album of my own. And then they all say, but it's not going to be one of those bass records. I hate bass records. But the reason I bring that up is because everybody tells me they want to do it and they're going to do it. And you're one of the few that has actually done it not only once, but twice. And twice, the second one is like three more. So it's almost as if you've done it four times. I didn't realize you already had part two in the works, because I was going to ask you if you maybe put a little extra pressure on yourself by calling this one part one. I didn't know part two and part three were already in the works. I was going to say Mel Brooks, I don't think ever made History of the World part two, did he? I don't think he's going to.
Yeah, no, when I started this was about just a little over a year ago. So I wanted to make sure that I had all the music that I wanted on the project. So I had over 25 to 30 songs, and then I had to cut it down a little bit. But I had, because there was a concept in mind as well. I wanted to have enough variety between vocals and instrumentals, and variety in music, because I really like changing styles and changing the sound of the bass to fit those styles, So I wanted to kind of bring all that, as well as, having different writers and arrangers, and some that I've collaborated with, and some that I just love what they did.
It's quite a list of names that you have on this project. James Hara, Bob Franceschini, Steve Cavalioni, Otmaro Ruiz, David Garfield, Guthrie Govan, Scott Henderson, Chad Wackerman, Lenny Castro, Gregg Bissonette. I mean, a lot of people you mentioned in both of your other interviews with me. So I guess you've been collaborating or doing something with a lot of these people for a long time.
We have been. Most of them are very close friends, and we've been working, on and off in the studio, playing live. So we become like family. That's one of the things that I enjoy being in LA, because I've been able to bring together all these friends that have become more like family than anything else. So besides having fun playing music, we really enjoy hanging out together. So it's for me, it's a blessing. I count my blessings in that.
That's a big part of it. Liking the people that you work with and hang out with. So do you have some target dates or deadlines for, well, first of all, when is the part one going to be available to the public? That's right around now, isn't it?
Yes, it was released on the 1st, which is just a few days ago.
August 1st, 2023.
Yeah, August 1st. Yeah. And so it's available now on iTunes Store for people that want to download, and then every streaming site from YouTube to Spotify to, Deezer, you name it. They're on all the streaming sites. But I'm also working right now with Bandcamp to try to get some higher res mixes there. So, because, a lot of times when you're using either Apple or the streaming sites, they use the lower resolution 44:116, or I really don't like MP3s because they really dither the quality of the music. And we put a lot of time in to make it sounding, sonically to be right. So with Bandcamp, I'm going to put in higher res, 9624, I believe it is, or 9632, with all of my music from like Life, Legacy, and Music. So we're working on that right now as we speak. So it'll also be available on Bandcamp pretty soon.
Okay. How are parts two and three going to be different from part one?
So the best way I can explain, because asked before from some of the friends, because why three parts? Well, first of all, I wanted to be able to have the timing work out as far as getting each part the right music. But what makes a difference, the way I can tell you, is In the United States, we have, when we eat, we have mostly a 3-course meal. When you go to a restaurant, you have an appetizer, you have a main course, and then you have a dessert. That's pretty much how I look at it. This part one is like the appetizer. Part two is the main course. It goes a little deeper with the instrumentals and vocals, the arrangements to get more intense. There's more stuff involved. It's a lot more, how would I say, time consuming, because there's more arranging, there's orchestration, there's all kinds of stuff. So it's the main course, and then part three becomes the dessert, and it's like excerpts of 1 and 2, but totally different songs, different arranging, different musicians, and it's kind of like the end credits, so to speak, in a movie.
You had to have been just totally consumed in this whole project for a long time.
As I said, it's been a little bit over a year. So it's been thought out, worked out, timing it with all the musicians. That's been, another thing, as you well know, what it's like. But fortunately, some of the tracks were already recorded back in the day. So we just got rid of some of the older tracks, put in some new tracks. I usually like to redo the bass and add a lot of other colors and rearrange it, just make it a little bit more today.
Sure. Do you have a target date for the other 2 releases, parts 2 and 3?
Not yet. Part 2 is, I would say, 95% done. We're just doing some overdubs, vocal overdubs on a couple of tunes that are left. The mixes are pretty much 90+% there. So once it's done, I want to leave some time in between part 1 to get to part 2. I don't want to just, throw out a bunch more music out there. But it won't be too long. It won't be too long till both parts 2 and 3 will come out. So
that's really exciting. Have you been able to do anything else in the meantime? Are you still working, gigging, recording?
Still recording. Finished doing a J.C. Penney commercial a week or 2 ago, and doing work with some of my friends. We just did a remake of the song Red Alert, and it was Doug Bossy, who was one of the guitar players for the Los Lobotomies, and David Garfield, and we had some other guests from Nashville that were playing drums and other instruments and stuff. But it was fun. It came out really good. They're mixing it as we speak, so I don't know when Doug's going to put it out, but he's going to let me know, and then I'll let everybody else know. But it was fun redoing that song.
Yeah, I bet. I see a few basses over your shoulder there. Talk to me about your gear, basses, amps, strings, effects. Just give me the
basses. Yeah, the basses I have behind me are most of the ones that I've used on the record. So, one is my Fender P bass Precision that I had modified by Kevin Beller at Seymour Duncan. And he made that thing. I used that bass on Brandon Fields records back in the 90s. Yeah. It's a great sounding bass.
I used to see him at, what was that place? Lick Cafe, I think it was called. A little tiny club upstairs over a restaurant.
Yeah. I remember that place. There were quite a few of those that we played at. Yeah, so that's one of them. Then I have a jazz bass that was modified by Roger Sadowski, and it's another great sounding bass. Even though they're both Fenders, they have their own tones and their own quality and space. And then the blue bass is a T bass from a friend in England that built a 5-string double octave bass, 24 fret. And he based it on a lot of the interests and what most of us bass players in New York and LA studio musicians liked, because he interviewed a bunch of us. And that's one of my go-to basses in the studio.
What's the name of that? What's the brand name of that?
It's called T-Bass. They don't make them anymore. Here's what happened. T-Bass originally was this bass player from England that built it, his own pickups and electronics. Then Trace Elliott bought the concept. Trace Elliott had it for a minute. Gibson then bought it from Trace Elliott, but they discontinued it. So when I talked to Gibson, I was like, "Why did you discontinue the bass? It's an awesome bass. It records well. You can if you're a soloist, you have 24 frets, so you can get up there to do solo lines or whatever. And for slap and finger, it sounds really good in the studio. A lot of the producers that I work with, they always ask me to bring that bass, because you just plug it in and the engineers love it because the sound is there. They don't have to do anything with EQ or that stuff. You know what I mean? So that bass is featured in the first song, Life Short, on part 1 of the series. Also on the last song, because the first song is all finger, power-esque. The last song is all slap. So you can hear,
bass.
Yeah. And then I have, of course, the exotic basses.
I was waiting for you to tell me that. Yes.
Yeah, I have the exotic basses, which I used on several of the tracks. I have a couple of moon basses. And oddly enough, the guy that built the moon basses is the same guy that built the exotic basses and my Mura bass now, because he was one of the builders for Moon, then transitioned to exotic, partnered with his buddy, and now he's on his own. He has his own company called Mura, and he does Mura guitars for the US and other countries. Beautiful instruments too. So I'm using all of them, including Warwick fretless, 5-string fretless that I have. And then there is another bass custom made for me. You don't see it there. It looks like a guitarrón, but it's an acoustic fretless bass, 5-string, made in Japan. But man, the craftsmanship is excellent, and it sounds a little bit like an upright. It's got, because D wood, I can mic it and go direct both ways, and it's very warm sounding. I use it on the Alex Acuna record, the last record he did called Gifts, and it's just really warm and full, and it's not quite the upright sound, but it's got that kind of bite and warmth.
Do you play upright at all?
I play, but I don't consider myself, with all the amazing players that we have in LA, I'm not that guy. When I came here, there was high demand, especially in the movies, for electric bass players. There was plenty of upright bass players that were doing movie dates, but not enough electric bass players that slapped and could stretch out and do different things. So I was more in demand for that. In the recording session work back in the 80s, there was a lot of, work for electric bass recording wise. So kept me pretty busy. Now the upright is in demand again in the movies, so it's changed. The electric bass is used not as often as they used to use it, so it's interesting how cycles turn. But I love the upright, but I admire and respect many of the guys that are actually friends of mine that are just amazing players with the upright. Some of them play baby bass as well for salsa music, which I absolutely love, So I just emulate that on the electric.
Reminds me of my Miami years that I look back on fondly.
Yeah.
What kind of strings do you play?
They're all Diodarios, medium gauge strings. Some of them, depending if it's the fretless, I use half wounds. Some of them are nylon strings, depending on the type of music. But for the rest of them, it's all round wound and medium gauge, like I said. And I'm very happy with them. They're pretty consistent. I haven't had very few batches to lab with dead strings, because sometimes you get batches with a couple of dead strings, and I hate that. But yeah, they've been really good. I have no problem recording with them, and Diodario's got quite a big selection of strings for everybody. So
They do. What kind of amp do you like?
I use both Trickfish and Aguilar.
Oh,
So Trickfish I use for more of the rock kind of stuff, because it's a little punchy and warm. And the Aguilar I use for most of the like live jazz, pop gigs, R&B kind of stuff, But I like them both. They both sound amazing. But that's mainly the two amps that I use, whether it's what I'm recording in the studio with them, live amplifier, and going direct, or playing, live concerts. Those are the two basically that I use.
Trickfish. I remember they like came out of nowhere. What was the guy's name? Richard Ruse. Do you go back that far with Trickfish?
Yeah. And yeah, it was a sad story about how, he left us. But the guys that took over are great cats, and they're doing a phenomenal job. And I really love their 1K or 1000 amp, 1000 watt amp. It's so freaking punchy, man. It's really nice. And actually, some places like the Baked Potato in Hollywood, some of the clubs like the one in Oakland, there's a famous place there, Hiroshi's, or forgot the name. Yoshi's. Yeah, they have Trickfish there. So
that's really great to hear.
And with the Baked Potato, you just go there and they have Trickfish, and it's the 1000, and it sounds great. So you don't have to bring gear to the clubs.
That's nice too.
Yeah,
especially as we're getting older. It's not as much fun to drag this stuff. Hey, let me ask you about playing bass and learning bass, because For Bass Players Only is a bass instruction site. And most of the people that come to For Bass Players Only to learn bass are, most of them are men in their 50s, 60s, 70s, not really career bound. They just have some time. They want to learn to play some classic rock riffs or some blues shuffles or some funk R&B, maybe a little walking bass. In that context, what advice do you have? It's not all men, it's about 91% male is our audience here, but what advice do you have for somebody like that who wants to learn to play bass? What do you think they should be thinking?
The funny thing is, we all were there at that place where we wanted to learn. So one of the things that helped me a lot, back in that time, there were these records on vinyl called drum drops. I don't know if you remember those. It was just all drum. So I would practice with those. And nowadays you can do it with pretty much any sequence, because there's samples of drums, playing. And mainly it was to get my timing right, whether it was a rock groove or a funk groove or a ballad or, a straight ahead jazz tune. Practicing with those things, and I would record myself. Back then it was a 2-track or 4-track, and listen to it and see if I was rushing or getting behind, and kind of getting that tempo locked into my system, so that right now if you say 120, I pretty much know where that sits, because it's a default click in most sequences. And then higher or lower, it's faster or slower. But yeah, so I seriously recommend getting time, really good time, and you can practice with just about anything. Garage band, they have all these drum things that so it's accessible these days. And even videos. I mean, you can go to YouTube and check out your favorite artists. And nowadays they have play along tracks where you can play along with some of your favorite artists, etc. So it's getting the time, because whatever style you're playing, you still have to play in time. So whether you're rocking or you're funking or you're playing jazz or blues or R&B, you have to have time. So that's the thing that I recommend.
It's important for any instrument, but it's especially important for a bass player to have good time and a good time feel and be able to lay it down and make it feel good.
Yeah, and locking in with the drummer, because the drummer's clock and bass player clock are not necessarily exactly the same. We find a happy medium of meeting together. And so if you're playing with great drummers that have impeccable time, then it's a no-brainer, right? It becomes pretty simple to be locked in with them. And then if you have discrepancies with other drummers, but they feel good, you can make that adjustment, because we don't have to be machines when it comes to music. There has to be expression. And so sometimes a little bit of movement is actually good. It makes it more exciting. If it moves up slightly or comes back down tempo wise, even if it's not arranged that way, as long as it's not dragging or really rushing, you know what I mean? It's more about the expression. So, yeah.
There's a certain style that's common with some piano players that lag along. It's a legitimate style, but I hated playing with guys that did that, because they weren't wrong. It was just a different style. But I'm more of a pocket player, or if anything, I like to push it ahead a little bit. And that you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Of course.
That's a challenge. But,
yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying, yes, it is a challenge. So because, besides the drummer, then you're I wouldn't say battling, but you're playing with keyboard players who also have their own clock, and guitar players have their own clock. And so that's the beauty of chemistry, is being able to bring guys together that can lock in. And I've been really fortunate to work with so many amazing and great musicians that even though they have their own body clock, they're really good, and they're good at what they do. So it makes it not only fun, easier to communicate musically, that is, when we're playing, and then being able to be spontaneous. That's a whole other added icing on the cake, so to speak.
Yeah, well, that is important. That's from musical seasoning and vocabulary and all those kinds of things. When I was down in Miami, I was very involved in the Latin music scene. I used to go to South America, Central America all the time. And there was one Latin pop star in particular who would phrase like really behind the beat. And we, if somebody in the band is slowing down, you try to either play with him or get him up to where he's supposed to be. But when you're backing up a singer, you got to change the tempo if the singer changes tempo. Well, he wasn't changing the tempo. He would turn around and go, because he was just phrasing really behind, which was kind of unexpected. And, eventually it gels and you figure it out.
Yeah. There are different forms of expression. There are some sax players that phrase, behind on purpose. Keyboard players, especially in the Latin music, they'll go into the montunos, reverse montunos. They do all kinds of break the time signature up, even though everything is still moving. The clave is still going. None of that is changing. But you're right, and and then they'll step it up to make it more exciting. They'll get on top of the beat with some of the solos that they do and things like that. So And some arrangements are done that way too, as a whole, where the music will move up slightly in certain sections and come back down in some other sections. It's part of the arrangement as well. So
You're bringing back a lot of happy memories for me.
Yeah, lots of kind of experiences in the different types of music and musicians that you work with.
What about you in the future? I know you're immersed in this project. You got finally, it's only been a few days since you had part 1 out. Now you got part 2 and part 3, but what can you see beyond that if you even want to think about it? Well, first, maybe you want to take a nap.
Then, yeah.
Any other projects or anything like that you would, any other dragons you'd like to slay when you're done with this project?
Well, there's always things that pop up where I'm either producing or arranging or playing on friends, other friends' projects. And I start back on tour with Olita Adams in September next month. So I'll be touring September, October, and November, I believe. We'll be doing some shows in the U.S. and then we're figuring out what's going to happen for next year, because there's already gigs lined up for next year as well. So that's my touring life, and studio wise, I'm always doing something in the studio. So I think after this project, because I'm really enjoying the process of collaborating with other musicians and friends, is to start doing more singles with friends, from different parts of the world again, because I'm really enjoying that process of working with musicians, because now you don't have to fly and be there physically. You can actually, like we're doing right now, we can see each other. I had Gregg Bissonette do his drums at his place, and we were able to communicate as simple as we are now, and I can hear the tracks and everything he's doing beautifully. And so it's we have the technology that makes it possible, so I can work with a lot of different guys just about anywhere, so I'm enjoying that, and I want to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I still marvel at what we're able to do today. There's probably so much in my phone that I don't even know is there. There's the technology is just mind blowing.
Yeah,
it's great.
There are parameters that we've never, discovered yet that exist in there. So,
yeah. What would you be, John, if you were not a bass player? Something outside of music.
Oh, what I originally wanted to be was a jet fighter pilot. That was what I was actually doing, getting ready to go when I was going to go to college. Music actually interrupted that process, but I wanted to be a jet fighter pilot and work in computers. I studied to be an electrician, and then I studied computers, and those are the two things that I really enjoyed. I did not know that I was going to be a professional musician. My dad taught me to play guitar since I was 6, and it was more something that we did together as a family. My brothers played, guitars and drums and other instruments. And so we're all a musical family, starting with my dad, but I did not know that I was going to be a professional musician. It happened, and I enjoyed the process, and I embraced it. And so I kind of put the other stuff in the back burner. I still love flying, though. I still love the flying. I mean, I have friends that have their pilot's license, and we'll go up every once in a blue moon and have a flight, and they'll let me take over once we're up in the air. So,
wow, that's great. Well, things turned out well all the way around.
I have no complaints. Very
great.
Blessed.
Well, congratulations on the new project. If parts 2 and 3 are anything like part 1, it's going to be amazing. And it's called Life, Legacy, and Music. Part 1 is now available. You can get it, sounds like, pretty much anywhere you get music. Is there a preferred place, or it doesn't matter where you want people to
Well,
go?
but most people, the younger kids stream, so it's all in all the streaming places. But folks like to download, like me. I love to download the music, so you can go to iTunes Store. If you go to the store, you can download the project there.
All right. Well, congratulations again on a job well done, and I can't wait to hear parts 2 and 3. Good luck and congratulations. Much luck and continued success to you, John. I hope we get to see each other in person again. It's been too long.
It's been too long. But thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, my friend, for being on. I'm John Liebman. You're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com. A lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for adults who want to play bass, because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to groove, to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. ForBassPlayersOnly.com. Thank you again to my special guest, John Pena. I will see you all next week right here, same time, same place. In the meantime, let's play bass.